I'm Mr. James.
And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
And we are the
the
educators. And we could probably call this Pissed Edition because, yeah, we live in a pretty messed up country. So this is about the election mess and division. It's November 5th. The election was 2 days ago, and we still don't even know who our president is. But we do know one thing: everybody hates everyone else.
Unfortunately accurate, but yeah. So we try to keep things fresh and interesting and current here, and so we just we couldn't come up with any other topic to start off with because it's just right there in front of us, and if we didn't talk about it, would be doing an injustice to the current state of events. But so it is an interesting time right now because we are still in the middle of a global pandemic, and we saw a enormous increase in new cases over the last week.
Like every single day was like a new amazing increase in numbers that we never had before. So it's like a new record every day.
Record breaking, yeah. So I mean, here in Maine, last week I reported that there was an increase of 360 cases from the previous week. This week, so since last Thursday, 690 new cases, and that does not count the 180 from yesterday, and that's unfortunate. So we're headed towards exponential growth, and exponential growth is only good when you're making money off from real estate or your stocks or something like that. But in pandemic terms, this is a very bad situation. In the United States, it wasn't exponential, but it was a very large increase. So this week, we gained 643,146 new cases.
Wow.
Last week, we got a little bit under 530,000. So 115,000 new cases above what last week's numbers were. Not headed in the right direction. And then in the world, 3,500,000 new cases in 1 week, whereas the previous week saw only 3,090,000. So give or take 500,000, a 500,000 person increase over the previous week. And it's very interesting, and it's hit home. So you and I are both musicians, and my band is currently on hiatus basically because of this virus. One of my band members contracted COVID-19, and as soon as he started showing symptoms, we canceled, said, all right, let's be logical about this. And he said, I've got some symptoms. I woke up with a sore throat. I don't think it's anything more than a cold, but let's take a break for a couple of weeks anyways. In that process, he got his girlfriend, who works at the same restaurant as him, got her infected. She had massive symptoms, and she's getting better now. My two other bandmates, one of them works in the same restaurant as those two. They had to be sent home, take a test, quarantine. Another band member who works at another restaurant in a different city also had their restaurant shut down, had to go home and test, all within this 2-week time frame of each other. And that's close home to me because that's my band. There's only 5 members in my band. 3 of them are under quarantine at this point right now, at the same time, and one of them is tested positive. And so it's a lot. And so right now we're talking, we're going to give it a few weeks, let him clean his home and do everything. And then we're thinking we're going to have to see where we are in 2 weeks before we can even practice again. We're going to probably have to wear masks now when we are in practice. And,
I think that's a mandate now. And I guess in the state, I was just told as a mandate, even being outside, everyone's going to wear a mask now. It's not a choice anymore.
Anytime that you're not alone, or anytime that you can't social distance. So let's just say that you're walking down a street that is busy, you got to wear a mask. You can't maintain social distancing if you're walking on a sidewalk with other people. So that's basically anytime that you're stepping out of your house, throw a mask on. I actually went to my dad's house to pick up some wood and to burn in my wood stove. Gave him a brand new mask because I know he just has the paper ones, and I gave him one of the cloth ones. And because I said, you know what, like, you're the person I'm worried about.
Yeah.
And while we were working together, I wore a mask because out of respect. And
Yeah.
you know, he doesn't necessarily he doesn't like to wear the mask, but he had to go to Walmart and had to put one on, and doesn't like the paper ones. So, you know, it's like these people that, like my father, who doesn't really know a lot about science and doesn't really know more than what's in his general vicinity.
Yeah.
We got to help them along too, because he's, you know, almost 60 now, and in that
Well,
age range where it's going to devastate him if he gets it. So,
well, you'll be happy because you'll have another mask today, because our district has issued masks to us.
well, have they?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
So,
And I can't wait for our mail order masks. You and I ordered some serious masks, and I'm just waiting for them to show
I know.
up.
I'm just waiting for the Bane mask to come in, but yeah.
I have a collection of like 20 masks now, and all of like different, like some of them hurt my ears, some of them hurt my nose.
Yeah, it's always, how does it hurt me? The little blood stains
like,
on each one. All right, whatever.
Yeah, and we did find out that you can buy masks on an HSA, so we now have a new collection of N95s that I'm bringing into work, and if you'd like one, feel free to grab one, because you know how that works. N95s are the only one that really offer any personal, you know, protection. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we might switch over to some science in the news. We're just going to do this really briefly today, because the big thing is we have to talk about what's going on. The election,
That's true.
The fact that we don't even have a president yet, the fact that there's a huge division in this country, that, yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. But on the lighter side, or whatever, maybe not a lighter side, first news item, horrible. Denmark is going to kill up to 17 million mink after discovering the mutated coronavirus. So basically a virus, this mutated version in mink can spread to humans. So they're going on their way to basically eradicating all these animals so they can stop the spread. And they said this country is the largest supplier of mink fur, which I'm absolutely against.
Sure.
People would wear that anyways, because I mean they look like ferrets, and I don't really specifically like a ferret as an animal per se, but I believe you shouldn't be killing animals anyways. And I'm not going to get into my soapbox on that and relate it to my diet. But
I didn't even think that this was even a thing. I mean, we've all heard of the mink fur trade, you know, history, right? But like, that's still a thing. I get it. I'm sure mink fur is very warm, and in Denmark, you probably need some warm clothes, probably similar climate to what we experience. But so I had no idea that this was still like a large thing. And yeah, I agree. I mean, they're kind of adorable animals. I wouldn't want one myself, but I don't know. I would hesitate to purchase anything where an animal had to be killed in order for it to be made.
Yeah.
You know, I have yet to have that take over my diet per se, but in case of this, you know, like, yeah, I mean, there's alternatives.
Yeah. Well, it says right here, going from the article, and this is from npr.org, it says, Danish officials have seen the mutated virus display a weak reaction to antibodies. So worrying that it's going crazy now, of course. The coronavirus is it's doing this big upswing, maybe the second wave, it's big. And now a mutated version that's not reacting so well to anything. And it's almost as if like, is this just like the first chapter towards the end of our existence? Hopefully not. I mean, we're talking about living forever, but the technology for that is years away. And I mean, the people who talk about this are looked at like they're talking about something, pigs flying.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and yet no one could have thought about this happening, all of this stuff.
Absolutely. And I mean, nobody could think of this. So a cross species mutation. Now we kind of heard early on a few months ago that cats were susceptible to getting coronavirus from humans and vice versa. There was a tiger in a zoo somewhere that famously got it or something like that. And but a mink, like it's an entirely different animal, different species and all that. So it is interesting to see these variants. And so they know that there are these variants and mutations that are happening, but they don't, and we can model them in 3D. I think you had sent me a link where they did that, where we can see the molecules, the differences in the molecules, but we don't know how to react to that. We don't know what that does. And so we know so much about this virus and yet so little at this point, because it's really one of those things where if you don't know exactly how the body works in every little detail, a few molecules here and there may not seem like much, but then it can, catch up in the long run. And I think that it's so unfortunate that, the culling a herd at any point, which is just a waste of life, is unfortunate. But we are in strange times, and we think back to the swine flu, which was the most recent pandemic in history that affected America, and millions of pigs were slaughtered back then. And I remember hearing about that and just thinking about the waste of life and what do you do with millions of slain pigs that you can't eat? Like, just the waste of resources and energy, and then the pollution from processing all of that. It's all around a really sad and unfortunate thing, but it's just goes into deep in the mystery of the coronavirus.
Yeah. Well, next news item, maybe a little bit on the up and up. Astronomers have found the edge of the Milky Way galaxy at last.
Yeah.
I think it's good we keep measuring better.
Well, because when you look at a picture of the Milky Way, you think that the boundary is where the light stops, right? Like the stars. And so apparently, what they're doing is they're realizing that beyond the stellar disk are gases and a halo of dark matter, basically, which, as of right now, is also a thing that is under investigation. And dark matter hasn't been proven. It's certainly one of the leading theories. I tend to not subscribe to it. I think that there's something else we're missing. But in this study, they found that there's this just vast amount of material out there swirling around with us. And they say that, so they measured it to nearly 2 million light years in just our galaxy alone.
Wow.
So 2 million years of light traveling at, 380,000 miles per second. Like the distance that would cover, 2 million light years. I mean, that's just, the brain can't comprehend how big that is, but that's awesome that we're still verifying the facts. Like science never says this is settled. There should always be someone else like double checking and triple checking that work, and that's great.
So I'm saying science is like, here's where we are at the moment, and that's what we should always have, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So, next item, and this is just a quick little thing, and I for me, I'm just like, whatever. I guess this is, I'm not surprised. It says female big game hunters may have been surprisingly common in the ancient Americas.
I would agree with that too, myself, to be honest with you. Like, I don't, when you are in a survival mode, I mean, we've talked about this when we're talking about living on the moon, or we're talking about basically just like generation ships and things like that. There really shouldn't be this gender divide where people can only do certain jobs. And I can imagine that in the real world game of survival that was, human history, that sometimes I guarantee that there was going to have to be, a lack of gender roles where people just did what needed to be done.
It needs to get done. Let's do it. Okay, let's do it. I mean, the Rosie the Riveter sort of thing story. If whoever it is, human, we need humans. Great, you're a human, you can do it. And anyone apply their mind to something or their body, and they're going to get stronger anyways by adapting to whatever environment they have to do. And that's basically what you do. It's not surprising to me. I think it's a good way for them to spearhead this thing. And notice I use spearhead as a a thing to kind of include, like, listen, okay, the picture everyone paints of this male female thing in these ancient times where there's going to be a female at home with like what, a dozen kids,
Right.
around the cave or whatever they're thinking these people are living in, and then the hunter male is out there with a giant spear to
Hmm.
slay the animal or something like that. When nope, this is going to be, it goes either way. It doesn't really matter. Survival. We need to
Absolutely.
eat. We need to hunt. That's what happens.
There
Now
was
we
a
just hunt carrots.
there's a cool phrase that I heard that what history never repeats, but sometimes it rhymes.
Yeah.
And I think that in the future, stuff that we talk about here, living on the moon and things, history is kind of rhyming right now. Yeah, once we really stick our necks out there and we're on the boundaries of survival and science, gender roles will fluctuate just like they had to before in order to keep the species alive. I think that's pretty cool.
So last thing, and this is kind of my version of science of like what I want to just mention, and this is one of the big things because a lot of people are into video games, and there's a lot of teachers and parents included that basically will say kids are wasting their time with video games, and these companies are constantly making new technology and new things just to market more video games to kids so that they can basically dwindle their time away and forget about the world. And I mean, in some ways, there's some good valid arguments about that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there is this thing, and this is mentioned for something called the Kinect, which is this multi-camera array that captures someone's body and senses their motions for the Xbox. And 10 years later, basically, and they're talking about it. And I just want to read this sort of paragraph to me because they're just basically mentioning how this technology was basically our introduction to all these other things that we now think are common. So they said the Kinect acted as an introduction to something called perceptive computing, which is a collection of technologies designed to digitize the concept of human intuition, like being able to recognize faces. And Kinect help users acclimate to a world in which our phones and tablets can recognize our face and can log into devices. So that was kind of one of the big things for that. But it also was the first real exposure for most people to a voice-controlled gadget. There were a few niche devices before, but this specific Xbox 360 Kinect predated Siri by a year and Alexa by 4 years. So think of all the things people have in their homes now and potentially, and their Amazon's trying to sell left and right, Echoes and things like that. We can talk and turn your lights off and stuff. And this was one of the first things because somebody wanted to be able to have you stand in front of your Xbox and move your arms around and interact with your game.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it's an incredible technology. I remember when I experienced it for the first time. It's probably a couple of years after it came out because the people that I knew couldn't afford it when it was brand new.
Yeah.
But it is incredible technology. I remember thinking it was incredibly creepy back then. Like, so this thing is sending out infrared, it's doing an infrared ping on the room.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like sending out infrared information, receiving that information back, kind of like radar, and judges textures and things off of that radar. Like it showed you a picture of what it could see in the room at the time. I was like, wow, that's really creepy. And a lot of people would turn it away, when they weren't using it because who knows, because it was that good. It showed a real image. You could recognize yourself in it. And one of the things that was a spinoff of this technology too, the actual Kinect technology, was that so 3D printers, they need a file of something. Well, if you could either construct something in 3D design software, or you could take a scan of a real world image, upload that to a computer and turn that into a file. A lot of these DIY electronics, 3D printer people use Kinect hardware to scan objects and turn it into an STL file to print. So the Kinect, like even though like I said, it's 10 years old, right? That hardware that is now being donated to Goodwill, and you could find, it's just the natural progression of technology eventually just becomes waste, right? You can find these things for cheap and turn them into something very useful. Like they're still useful, especially in turning something real into a digital model, which a lot of 3D printing is about that. And so that just shows you how powerful that technology really is when you can repurpose the technology to adapt to a newer topic.
I want to mention too that I get so that article specifically came from one of my favorite articles my favorite places online to get articles about technology relating to games and stuff, and it's called Engadget. And everybody out there, please go to Engadget.com and just look up. They have reviews on stuff, and just I get that every single day, and they just talk about what's going on in technology, specifically like watches, phones, but it's so interesting because you can see slants for politics and everything else coming through the world of that technology and how that gets influenced. And that brings us to our main topic, one of our main topics. And I think you may be the one talking the most on this because your life seems to be in the balance for a lot of this.
Yeah, well, we are a pretty political family here at the Ritchie compound, as I would call it, and we have been heavily invested in politics here. So we've been basically, I met my wife in 2008 prior to that election, and that's when I really kind of dove into politics. So we've been in it every day since, and I've watched a lot of things happen. But what I could say that right now that I've never seen in any election is this mess. I mean, I take that back. I haven't seen this mess since 2000 with the hanging chads and all that stuff, which I think was a preposterous outcome for the situation. And we're kind of right in the middle of it right now again. Like instead of hanging chads, it's sealed envelopes and signatures and all these things, which are good. We need this process. We need to have votes be real. We need them to be legitimate. There is a process, but I never ever thought in a million years that I would see a sitting United States president physically try to interrupt and or incite others to interrupt the actual voting process while the vote is still being counted. In every election there's mail-in voting, and in every election it takes a while to process those votes. There's a lot of physical manual labor involved in that. And because of that, that's what's causing the mess right now. So, one particular side didn't want to be able to count the votes ahead of time because this is an unusual year with the pandemic. People don't want to go wait in line. They don't want to go in and share air with people in a stuffy voting booth. They don't want to, their common sense tells them that the normal process of voting is risky, and they're right. And so we got to come up with modern solutions to modern problems. And so we did, with expanding mail-in voting, and there was record mail-in voter turnout. When there's record mail-in voter turnout, the labor process goes up. I mean, it takes a lot more to have someone else open an envelope, open the second envelope, pull that out, feed it through the machine than it does for the actual person filling it out to take that, feed it through the machine. And so here we are in the middle of the count, where I think I compared it to like a football game where in the last quarter the team has possession of the ball but they're behind, suddenly calls a timeout, they go up to the refs, game's over, we won, we're going to go home now, nothing else to see. And the ref's like, but you're behind on the scoreboard and there's still time left, what do you mean? And the team is like, well, the other team's cheating. And the ref goes, okay, well, what's your proof that they're cheating? And they say, the proof is that they're ahead. So they must be cheating right now. Well, game's over. We got to go home now. And it's like,
if I'm not winning.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, imagine the fans coming out of the stands and rushing the field and yelling at the refs that they got to stop the game, that they've won and that, the other team's cheating. And it's like, would we respect a team that did that? No, of course, it'd be kicked out of the league, whatever league it was. And so but to have it here, this is challenging democracy, not just a
I
football.
know it's everything's being challenged. Every and
And
yeah,
there needs to be checks and balances. Sure, if there is election fraud, we need to investigate. And in history, there hasn't been a whole lot of election fraud that has been brought out to the daylight, at least. And
yeah. Lot
you know,
suspected in 2016. There was a lot suspected, and people, I'm sure, it's still
it's
believe a
fresh.
lot happened, and this is just another thing that I'm sure that people are checking on, and who knows,
Yep.
maybe whatever did something in 2016, which everyone seems to happened, maybe their plan was something different this time around.
Right. And it's way harder to actually hack into, a networked voting machine than it is for someone to incite others to distrust the system,
Yeah.
throw that into chaos. And I've never seen that before. I've always grown up reading books, learning about history, hearing about this word propaganda, and that word never really sunk into me, because I was just like, oh, like propaganda is just these people that are trying to sway you. It's like advertisement.
Yeah.
It's advertisement of an idea instead of a product, really. And so I was just like, okay, yeah, sure, that exists out there, but like, it seems to be pretty obvious to me, when I see it or whatever. And in this last election, especially, versus even 2016, propaganda that doesn't have a basis in reality that people cling to. And it's really upsetting for someone that, like me, that clings to reality so hard, as a scientist, as a, I use that term lightly, scientist, someone whose profession involves science as a scientist, so, I teach science. So as a teacher of science, as a believer in science, and someone who feels very grounded to reality, all of these crazy conspiracies that are getting people wound up, it seems like an uphill battle, because it takes an order of magnitude more energy to dispel a rumor than it does to create it.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are in this this mess right now, is this battle between sides. So there's this huge division in between the two sides.
And I'm surprised, and really, I mean, because we both have social media, and as much as people want to trim down every social media thing they have so that basically they could be preaching to the choir all the time and basically have everybody on their side.
Echo chamber.
It's not good to do that, but also it's almost impossible to do that, because some people are always flipping their sides. They don't know which side they're on, but people are always choosing sides. People always want to choose sides, and they want to choose your side because there's something you're going to say or write, and it's going to indicate to them that you're on the other side, no matter what. You're automatically on the other side. I mean, it would be bad for me to right now say, "Hey, everybody, I made this vegan casserole." Oh, you must be on the other side. You must be voting for this specific person, because if you're this person, if you eat this way, then you're this type of person, and we're going to judge you. And all of a sudden, all of their animosity towards that other side gets thrown onto you, and now you have the weight of the world on your back, and everyone's doing that to everyone else right now.
And it could be interesting too, because like I could say to somebody, I'm building a muscle car in my garage. Oh, you must be one of those people. And be like, yeah, that muscle car parks right next to my electric car that I drive to work. Like, oh, well, then you must be on that other side, And it's like,
what side are you on?
I own multiple chainsaws, and I cut down wood, and I throw it in my wood stove, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I thought all right, now, and it's like,
but I have a 3D printer.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I believe in the scientific process, but what you can't be all that.
Yeah.
Like I teach music. Okay. So I teach music. Maybe that's something. But I have degrees mostly in science.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I dance ballet. This is true, guys. I'm not lying about this here. I'm in a ballet. but I also like bodybuilding, lifting weights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
And self-defense, you're skilled in self-defense.
well, just
Oh,
it's like
okay.
all these little things it's like
Yeah.
that are like opposite. Like, wait a minute, these two, you can't be all those things at once. Yes, you can be. You can be human. You can be into
There's
many different things.
too many of these people that are this polarized idea, and there's a lot of people that really feed into it. And I enjoy being someone who runs contrary to what somebody would assume.
Popular opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very unfortunate and interesting at the same time. This division, this polarization that I never, I learned about always existing somewhere else in these books and videos and movies and stuff like that. Now here it is right in front of me. It makes me worried because all of this division,
there you go.
all of this division in the country and in the world, I mean, it's not going to lead to anything good. Obviously, the best things happen when we come together. And I think that, a major difference and a major source of division is just this lack of common ground, because there's this stark difference right now between people who believe in science and logic and reason, but then there is this huge subsidiary of people that are willing to do anything to make their opinions become reality and reject anything that is objective. And to them, they live in this subjective world where everything fits exactly what they need to feel comfortable, and they don't allow anything that challenges their ideas in. And I think that's dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the source of it right now is this lack of common ground that used to be science and objective facts about the world. Gravity exists. The world is round. Simple things are breaking down right now, and it's very interesting, unfortunately. But there seems to be, there's this new trend. It's kind of new, but kind of old. It's something very popular these days, known as The Secret.
Yeah, I remember that.
which is the name of a book, and also The Power of Positive Thinking, which is the name of a really old book, which I'm going to dive into in a little bit here. But these are very popular books based on the subject of positive thinking and basically wishing
something was real and it becomes real because you wanted it to. You willed it to be.
Yeah. And so the Secret is this big popular book that was pushed by Oprah and a bunch of these positive thinking people. And on its face, it's a little bit different. So I mean, it's like it's advertised as turning your thoughts into reality, and thoughts become things. And so people interpret that as, all right, I'm going to manifest my own destiny. I can use the power of my thoughts to make my destiny. But in practice, that becomes reject anything that does not meet my preconceived notions or goals.
Yeah.
So that means anything that doesn't meet what I want the world to be can be rejected and pushed aside. And some of that can be helpful, and some of it's truthful. Like when you're thinking positively, you can change your physiology. You can, you can inspire others to be positive. You can really affect your mood in the day and things like that. So there's some reality. Obviously, you and I at work, we could be having a tough day. We still try to present to the students, and usually our peers, but sometimes we vent. But sometimes, usually to our peers, we try to at least present that things are going well, because we don't want to be that negative person in someone's life. So there is some truth behind this. But and there was this really cool thing. I watched Ray Kurzweil's TED Talk. Yeah, and he was talking about the neurocortex, and so he did mention, and so again, we're talking about the truths of this, that our brain creates our thoughts, but our thoughts also create our brain, because there are these hierarchies of thought processing, and so the way that you think can change the structure of your brain. And he in his TED Talk, he talks about how they have these scans now that are so powerful that they can actually watch synapse connection development happen in real time. They can see thoughts actually being formed in the mind. And so there is some truth to it that, yes, positive thinking can help.
Yeah.
However, these ideas quickly detach themselves from reality. So including the idea, so in The Secret, at first it seems like this, positive thinking,
Like, yeah,
good stuff, nice spiritual boost, all that stuff. But then they try to wade into physics and quantum physics and things, and they say that thoughts are magnetic, and they have a frequency that is sent out into the universe and
Yeah.
attract all like things that are on the same frequency.
Woo! Woo! Woo alert! Woo alert! Which means pseudoscience, which means fake.
Yes. Woo, as I learned that one from Carl Sagan. And yeah, this is definitely like all of a sudden everyone's red flag alarm bell should be going off as soon as you hear things like thoughts are magnetic. All right, magnetism is a quantum physical effect, but your thoughts are not magnetic, all right? And so even things that are on similar frequencies don't necessarily draw each other in.
Yeah.
Like the physics that they're trying to wade into are completely wrong. But that doesn't let them stop. Of course they keep writing. And so there's no data that suggests that there were these powers that transmit through frequencies and things. Although, the idea that thoughts are frequency, probably not that too far removed from reality. I'm sure that there's some truth in that, but again, don't hurt yourself stretching that far,
Yeah.
like it's, there's a lot of other logical issues. Like one of the things that came up in this book, and I'll tell you why I'm mentioning this. I'll sum it all up in the end here, but there was a quote that illness cannot exist in a body that has harmonious thoughts. A great idea to push. I get it. I'd like to have my family members that are ill or have some health issues to think positively and get them through whatever it is. But in reality, let's take the coronavirus for existence. Like our personal conditioning, our diet, the viral load that we experience if we can contract this virus, are all factors that definitely play a role in how sick we get and whether or not we survive, whether or not we have lifetime illnesses or not. And it doesn't come down to positive thinking. Yeah. I'm sure there's more than a few positive thinking people that have experienced this virus already. And I'd like to hear from them if they're out there listening. I thought so positively, but eventually, it really brought me down, and that's the way that illnesses work. Yeah. And the reason why I mention this is because it's tied into the election, because so Donald Trump, our president, follows the doctrine of Norman Vincent Peale. So he was one of the original people that really pushed in the 50s this idea of positive thinking. And he created the book. His most famous work was The Power of Positive Thinking, which was a New York Times bestseller that sold like 5 million copies in a few years. And so Trump's parents really fell hook, line, and sinker for these teachings, and they even attended the church where the author of the book was the head pastor. So they dove right into it. And the whole thing behind The Power of Positive Thinking is that it preaches self-confidence as a life philosophy. So it tells you to push, or it pushes thinking positive thoughts, and even through the toughest times. For instance, if you're losing an election, push those positive thoughts. You're not losing, they're losing. And so it teaches you to depreciate any obstacle. So anything that's in your path. So if you're driving to work, and someone's in front of you, they're an idiot, or they're wrong. There's, anything that's in front of you that is keeping you from your goal depreciates. You could automatically judge it negatively. And it's got some power in this. And one of the things that they say too is they say, make a true estimate of your abilities, raise it by 10%, and live your life as if you are 10% better than you really are. And just to give you that extra positive boost. And when it comes down to this thought process of a lot of the people right now are that I don't agree with this information, therefore I'm going to reject it. And it's not what I believe in already, so therefore it doesn't exist. It's fake and it's untrue. And that kind of thinking can basically make you detached from reality. And in the 50s and 60s, when people obviously criticized the book, they said, yeah, this could really cause some serious mental illness, like delusions of grandeur, or just delusions in general. That, say you come up with a business idea. Nope, this business idea is perfect. I'm going to ram it through, and you could drain your entire life savings, drain the life savings of others that you rope into it. And this stuff happened. It does happen, and so this sort of thinking, this dangerous form of rejection of truth, I think, is something that needs to be talked about a lot more. And the book had numerous examples of nameless experts and sources that didn't exist. It was really just sort of hyperbole that the author just made and said, this famous author said this. And
or just found a little, quote, grab a quote, a segment of what someone said and like, yeah, that fits in with what I meant.
Yeah. And if you can't attribute it to a source, does it exist? And that's what citations and sourcing is for. Yeah. And so many mental health experts criticize the author as a fraud or a charlatan, a word that we like to use as well, because using the techniques the author gives, one would simply label them as, so the people that call them charlatans, they would just simply say, oh, no, you're the charlatan for not believing in me. It's easy. It's so easy to just flip any negative.
You're being negative, so I don't need you in my life. Stop being negative. Boom. I'm going to keep doing what I do, and the results I'm getting are obvious to me. So just because you don't believe them doesn't mean they're not true. But there's no objective thing. It's all that one person's subjective idea of their own reality.
And that's a fundamental breakdown of objectivity, right? Yeah. So we all have to agree on objectivity, things that we could all experience and sense with our individual minds and senses. And there should be this common ground. We don't have that common ground anymore. And I think that's a fairly new luxury, because the cold, hard reality of, in the past, where it's, you don't get enough food, whether or not you believe you have enough food or not, you're done. Yeah. You go to hunt an animal and the animal turns on you and attacks you. Whether or not you want to believe that you're injured or not, doesn't matter, And then in this modern society, we have this ability to be able to push and reject these ideas, I feel. And, so science, proof, and consensus, consensus meaning not all of us are always going to agree. There's no possible way. We're humans, but a consensus of us has been what we kind of base reality on. Yeah. And that's fair, because we have to know our own limitations in order to be able to move forward. And when people stop agreeing on the same reality, it's impossible to find middle ground. And so you can't really say that, I agree to disagree, when someone's saying, I think the earth is flat, that's just not,
they have to have, we need to be at the same place, because I was going to mention, everything is fake news to someone who's engulfed in their own faith and beliefs. And faith just means that someone believes in something that there is no proof for.
Yeah,
they're going to believe in it no matter what. And then when you're trying to say, well, this is what many people have objectively talked about and shown, and they're going to say, you're basically attacking me. And when everyone takes it personally, you're personally attacking me, you're going against my rights, you're the reason why I feel these emotions, I'm not going to own up for anything, then that person has a problem. Because guess what? You're the reason why you have these emotions. You cause those emotions. It's how you think of something. And your reasoning behind your thoughts is the reason why you get yourself into this mess in the first place. And it's the reason why this entire country is divided. It's because people are so engulfed in themselves. I think we've given everybody a participation award for doing nothing. And everyone's on a soapbox and feels entitled to whatever. But they didn't earn anything. They didn't work hard towards anything. And those that are actually working hard towards something are basically having to explain themselves for no reason to those that aren't working. And they're belittled for no reason. They're belittled for those that haven't worked towards something, because they feel, well, our opinions, everyone's opinion matters. No, no. Educated opinions
Yeah,
matter.
right.
Non-educated
And
opinions do not matter. You need to
there are
educate
these
yourself.
this idea that because I created the thought, it deserves respect. No,
Yeah.
it can't possibly work. It just physically can't possibly work in a world or a universe that is based upon physics. Okay, there's right, there's wrong, there's certainly opinion in between, but like it's just we have to find this middle ground. Faith being belief without evidence, and so some people say, nope, this perception that I have is downloaded into my brain from a higher power. There's no correcting it, there's no fixing it. It's correct already. And it's like that's really dangerous, because what if one of those things that you think got downloaded into your brain is, you know, something simple like
Violent. Yeah.
violence. Yes, violence towards someone that's different, prejudgment, without having a logic behind it. Like for instance, either racial or gender based. Like these people aren't worth as much as me. All right, so you got to challenge those beliefs. What's the proof? What's the evidence? Objective things that everyone around can see, and that's the basis of logic and science in general, because we're all in this together.
I mean, I mean, we mentioned on the show a lot of times promoting science, but we're just promoting critical thinking. We're promoting survival because we need to move on from where we are. We need to use the technology we have currently and make better technology and keep doing that over and over and over and over again into infinity. And it
Yep.
needs to keep moving in a good direction. And it can't be stopped by those that don't believe in what is blatantly in front of them or how things work because of years and years of being on the backs of giant thinkers and tinkerers that made what we have, textiles, technology that computers we wear on ourselves, technology for our eyes to not have the blue light from the computer screen on us, being able to hear, microphones, that
Right.
the whole thing, this whole thing exists. To understand how this all exists would be very, very time consuming to go over all of it. And we accept it, but we can't accept this and accept other things that go fly in the face of how this whole works and
Right.
why and the process that made all of this. You can't sit on top of a mountain of all this culmination of human efforts and say that everything that you're basically taking advantage of, it means nothing, and anyone who worked toward it meant nothing, and that
Right.
your myths and your just out of nowhere beliefs are going to basically rewrite everything, and that's everything was wrong, and yet you're still enjoying the labors of somebody else. And that's
And
what I think
especially,
gets everyone upset who is educated.
well, especially when people have these beliefs, or certain faith, which is again belief without evidence, and then they want others to accept it. Okay, like so, in a civil conversation, if you provide a statement or if you provide something you state as a fact, basically, you have to follow that up with your evidence. You can't just say this thing is real without showing the evidence behind it. And then when you have educated, logical thinkers that have these other people saying, impressing upon them, you need to live your life this way. What's your evidence? I don't have any. You just need to. That can't go over. Okay,
Yeah.
there's got to be this objective basis in reality in order for us to be connected and actually like work together here. And I think for the most part, right now in our society, we got to realize, okay, um, number one, we're destroying our environment. Number two, we're destroying ourselves from within by this division. And let's be objective. Let's look at the evidence, make some statements, find ways to solve it. And one thing I think that we could do is just find this common ground known as logic and science, and work together through it.
Yeah. And like I mentioned all the time during the show and stuff like that, we're not against anybody on the show. and we're not hitting, everyone might think we're going to be hitting on religion or anything like that, and we're not knocking any of that stuff. In fact, we're going to have a show coming up pretty soon just called basically Science and Religion, and we're basically going to give a nice even view of everything and why both can be important in someone's life. We're basically saying that you need to be critical and rational thought. You need to survive, and you cannot throw away what years and years of educated people have built for us to understand our world, just because whims and hearsay might seem like fancy at the moment. You can't throw it all away. And like my last little thing I wrote down in our notes was that the quote, someone goes, "No man is an island." No man or no woman is an island. So none of us are basically the center of the universe. We may seem like the center of our universe. We are all part of this society together. And when we try to pull too much towards ourselves, we're taking away from others. So when we're such a personality that you need to draw energy from others, you need to have your ideas you need to be engulfed in them and engulfed everybody else in them, then you're taking away from someone else. And in some cases that can be pretty bad, especially if you get a large enough base of people following you, that you call these cults and such. And especially when it's off basis without any education behind it. And,
Absolutely.
No rational stuff. So right now we're thinking our country is in this state, and it's dangerous, and we're hoping it doesn't get to a level where violence is more. I mean, it's bad enough as it is, and we're just we're fearful because we're on the side of education. I mean, that is our job, and I think we're doing the right thing, but we're hoping that society can do the right thing, and that there can be a level basis for the U.S. right now.
Yep, because we need it. We need to come together, and we got a lot bigger problems to deal with. And
yeah, I know. There's a moon up there to live in. We need to go up. We can't keep going down.
People talk about a civil war. That's only going to destroy us even further, and I don't think that's going to happen, hopefully. But it's certainly not going to get us to the point where we can have generation ships and get back to the moon and do all the things that we like to talk about on the show.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're going to end on that note, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll have a president pretty soon, and we'll start cleaning up the mess that is our lives in America.
That's right. Hopefully.
I'm Mr. James.
And I'm Mr. Richie.
And we are the educators. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night. Leave a comment. Reach out. Oh.